I'm 160 miles or so into a day trip here where I'm sort of taking the Moto Guzzi V7 Sport out for a ride to see if it's a bike that I would consider taking across America in June on my next cross-country trip. So far, I have to say, if you're new to the channel, a little history. I've gone through one or two bikes over the past couple of years, and I've settled on two. My 2026 Moto Guzzi V7 Sport and 2025 Royal Enfield Himalayan 450. I love both of these bikes endlessly, for different reasons, but I adore them both. Back in June of 2025, I did a cross-country trip from Portland, Oregon to Cape Cod and all the way home, about 7,300 miles on a Moto Guzzi V85 TT. It was fantastic, and if I still had that bike, I would probably take it without question, but I don't. So I'm left deciding between taking my Royal Enfield Himalayan 450 or my Moto Guzzi V7 Sport. I'm fully aware now of what the Royal Enfield Himalayan is capable of. I've taken it on a couple of short trips and one decent-sized trip from Portland down to California and back, and it handled itself remarkably well. The Moto Guzzi I've only had for a few months, and we haven't really done a whole lot of adventuring, exploring, journeying, any of that type of stuff. This today is probably going to be the longest I've been in the saddle since I've had the bike. By the end of the day today, I should be topping off about somewhere around 250, 270 miles, something like that. I'm not really sure. We basically went from Portland up to Cape Disappointment in Washington, and let me tell you, it was a disappointment because part of it was closed. Down to Astoria, and now I'm heading from Astoria all the way back to Portland. There was some meandering in between. Before I even bothered to sit down and start thinking about which bike I might want to take on the trip, I wanted to get the V7 out and see how comfortable it would be for me to spend multiple hours over a couple of 100 miles in the saddle. Because up until today, I hadn't really had that experience. In general, the Guzzi V7 is a remarkably comfortable bike. The seat is comfortable, the seating position is comfortable, the vibrations are totally manageable, but the one sort of Achilles heel of the V7 Sport is that it leaves your knees slightly more bent than would otherwise be on another bike. Meaning it's a little crouched. If I were much taller than I am, I think I'd be a little bit uncomfortable on this bike, but as a person who's 5'10", or what is that, 179, 180 centimeters, something like that, the bike feels like it fits me perfectly well. I just sort of want to make sure that the leg positioning isn't going to be uncomfortable over a greater amount of time, more than, the half an hour to an hour that I've normally been doing on this bike. So far, after 165.7 miles, I'm perfectly comfortable. I don't think that all-day comfort would be a problem. Now, for me, on my last trip, a normal day might be somewhere between 350 to 450 miles, and sometimes in the blistering heat. So doing, 250 miles or whatever I'm going to do today in 55-degree weather might not be the best one-to-one sort of test. But it's going to give me an idea of whether I should even consider taking this bike. And I think I've made up my mind that I'm going to consider taking the Moto Guzzi V7. That doesn't mean I'm going to take it. That just means it's now in the running. This and the Himalayan. Anyway, given that I plan on spending close to a month on the road with nothing but me and my motorcycle, I feel it important to make the correct decision when it comes to deciding which bike to take. I don't want to just pick one from a hat or pick the Himalayan because the Himalayan is more geared towards touring, whereas the Moto Guzzi is geared more towards, I don't know, day trips or whatever. I want to make a super informed decision based on both practicality but maybe more so on emotion. What bike am I going to travel across the country on and feel like I've bonded with it, feel like that bike became part of the journey? If you recall a recent video, I talked about what I consider journey bikes. And to me, a journey bike is, it's a bike that isn't just a tool that you get from point A to point B, but it becomes part of the story. It's a friend that you're taking with you, or it's taking you with it. I don't know how these things work. You get what I'm saying, though. It becomes more than a motorcycle. It becomes somewhat organic, right? I'm pretty convinced that both the Himalayan and the V7 would fit that bill. I'm pretty convinced that I've already bonded with both of these bikes, so I don't think that either one of these bikes wouldn't meet the criteria of being a perfect journey bike to ride across the country. What it really comes down to is, what kind of story do I want to end up telling about my cross-country journey? Do I want to just get myself like an old leather bag, throw a couple of pairs of underwear and a credit card in it, strap it onto the back of this V7, and just sort of go for it? Sort of that romantic, I'm going to write a book about it type journey. Or do I want to strap on the panniers and all of the stuff I've got onto the Himalayan and put my Aerostich suit on and have a real adventure journey across the United States? Maybe hit some dirt, not worry about gravel roads and stuff like that. Just have an adventure as opposed to a meander. In a future video I might talk about this, but in some ways I think that the Moto Guzzi V7 Sport particularly is like the ultimate sport touring machine. This thing is not slow. It's pretty damn fast. It's surprisingly fast. And also, with a set of either pannier racks or, like I have, a grab rail, you can put some pretty serious luggage on this thing. The other night, I tested out whether or not my rackless ADV system would work, and it fits like a glove. So that means I basically have 70 liters of storage. I think it's rackless 70, rackless 80, I forget what it is, but it's something like 70 liters that I could potentially put on this bike pretty much effortlessly. And then when I get to my destination, if I feel like it, I can strip that whole system off in about 30 seconds and have a rip-roaring little bike to take into the twisties, completely unladen by luggage and stuff like that. It kind of is, in a way, the ultimate sport touring bike. Now, one thing that this bike wouldn't be great at is, dirt and stuff like that, but you don't buy a sport touring motorcycle for that. You buy an adventure motorcycle for that. Anyway, the Himalayan, though, really is built from the ground up to sort of be a cross-country, mile-munching adventure bike. Something that would be perfect for a journey like what I'm planning on doing in June. It's got plenty of tie-downs for luggage. It's got a giant fuel tank that'll go on and on, but so does the Guzzi, by the way. I've now got LED auxiliary lights on it. I've got my Chiggy on it. I've got my Alaska butt pad, sheepskin seat cover, and I've got almost all of the gear that Lone Rider actually has in their catalog at my disposal. So, that seems like it would be the natural choice, right? But there's something in my heart that says, well, you've never really gravitated towards the natural choice or the practical choice. You always kind of follow your heart. Maybe you should follow your heart with this one. It's not like I don't have experience riding a Moto Guzzi across the country. Like I said, the last time I did my cross-country trip, 7,300 miles, that was on a Moto Guzzi, a V85 TT. And that bike handled it perfectly. That bike and this bike pretty much have the same engine. It's just the bike is physically set up differently. I mean, sure, there are other differences, but, at the end of the day, it's a Moto Guzzi with pretty much the same engine, so I know what I'm getting myself into. Regardless, if you're looking into buying a Moto Guzzi V7 Sport or any of the other modern Moto Guzzi V7s, just know that I'm now 175 miles in on this day, and I'm feeling perfectly comfortable. Now, I will say I do have a heated vest on underneath my jacket because even though it's 55, I got a little chilly, so I threw it on. Because one of the drawbacks to this bike, it has zero wind protection. Now, I'm looking into getting like a temporary windscreen. I don't want anything permanent, I don't think. But, you know, a high quality temporary windscreen that I can put on and take off. I don't know, that might solve some problems. Not that I really have much of a problem with the wind coming from the front of this bike. It's all pretty clean air. You know, wind itself has never bothered me on a motorcycle all that much. It just becomes sort of an issue when it's cold out. Like I said, the Guzzi has a, 17-liter gas tank? It's huge. It's big. It's plenty big enough for touring. I can get well above 200 miles on a tank on this bike. I haven't really even tested it because every time the low gas light comes on, I just fill it up. But if I really pushed it, I could get 250 out of this bike, 250 miles. But you don't buy a Moto Guzzi V7 for practicality. You don't buy it necessarily because it's got a big gas tank or whatever. You certainly don't buy it for the display, according to a lot of people. You buy it for the charm, for the soul, for the essence of riding such a beautiful heritage motorcycle like a Moto Guzzi V7. And the idea of taking a bike like this and doing something that it's not necessarily made for, which is cross-country travel, I find it super appealing because I know this bike can do it. I know it's more than capable of doing it, and I know that I'm more than capable of enjoying it. I just don't know which I would enjoy more. Doing it on this bike and making some sacrifices as far as potentially comfort, because the Himalayan's much more stretched out, it's much more open. I'm sure that in the long run, the Himalayan would be more comfortable to take across the country. I don't know. I'm in a quandary. I've got 3.5 months or whatever to figure it out. And again, you know, it's not like the most important decision in my life. It's just something fun. It's a fun exercise that I'm going through right now because I have the privilege of being able to do it. I have the 2 bikes, and I have the privilege of both being able to take time off of work and going across the country and having my pick of 2 amazing bikes to do it on. So, you know, there are people who have much bigger problems than I do. But I just thought it's kind of fun to think about. And I'd love to hear what you think. Would you take the Moto Guzzi V7 Sport across the country over the Himalayan 450? Or would you make the more practical choice and take the Himalayan 450? The caveat being, I don't really love one bike more than the other. I really do love both of these bikes. So it's not like taking the Himalayan would be the consolation prize. Just not sure that that's the trip that I'm bargaining for. I think I want the more romantic side of travel instead of the more practical side. But I'd love to hear you weigh in, tell me what you think. And at some point, you know, I'll make a decision and I'll make a video telling you all about the preparations I'm making for crossing the country. Most of which include picking a day that I leave. And that's hopefully as far as I'm going to go. And then we'll see what happens from there. If you enjoy my videos, please consider subscribing to my channel, hitting that like button, and doing all that fun stuff. And I'll catch you on the next one.